we'll get going, and I thank everyone for being here today. This has become quite a passionate subject of mine. I'm an architect. I run the architecture group here at WGI, and this is becoming a real passion for our design process as myself and my team and all of our engineers and planners and everyone else here at WGI. We look to strive to create the best places we can for the people that we serve. Brief introduction of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'll get into a little bit about myself, a little bit about WGI, why we're talking about this, and then what is CPTED? We really need to know what that is, because it plays an integral role into the idea of implementing safety and security. And if you're confused of what the abbreviation is, I'll get into that as well. And what is the role of an architect? Why do you need us? Implementing something in terms of safety and security into one of your projects, and then we'll talk about a few related concepts that really relate to the idea of safe and secure, places, but also what can be done as well to contribute to that notion. So again, I'm Eric Lutman. I'm the director of architecture for the company, and I am born and raised in Central Florida. We're based in Tampa, where the architecture staff is here, and looking to expand. But we, with today's society and technology and COVID, we're able to communicate and be effective through this kind of a platform, across the nation. I have 15 years of experience doing both design and consulting as an architect. I'm licensed currently in Florida and Texas with a couple of other states pending. And the good thing about the way it works is that, I can get a license in almost any state, just, through a reciprocal process through NCARB, the National Council of Architecture Registration Board. So that's a process that's easily obtainable to get licensed in almost every state. And I went to the University of South Florida. So born and raised local boy here to Central Florida, and enjoy the weather and the sun and the hot, and that's just, I enjoy, traveling to the cold, but, stay in the warm weather. As you see, we've got offices all over the country. We're expanding and growing. Florida is where we started, and we're based in Tampa for the architecture group. But you can see we've got the reach throughout the United States. Our core values, and really, the idea of safety and security hits home with an architect, because it really drives home not just what I do for a daily, in my daily life, but the vision of the company and transforming the world, how we use it, how we live it, how we experience. That is really guided by, that guides what I do on a daily basis. The passion for people, committing to greatness, and looking for that change that makes our communities better places to live, work, and play. Why do we think about this? And this is, a general introduction of what it is that we do. And who is this for? This is for anybody: school administrations, business owners, landlords, first responders. This is for anybody who wants to start to think about what it means to be safe and secure in your facilities. What is this for? The protection, obviously, of people and places and assets and IP, confidential, even to the, thinking about technology and cybersecurity. And this is against, anything that's undesirable: terrorism, violence, crime, any behavior that is unwanted at your places. Now we're seeing a shift towards transparency, accessibility, inclusivity, that we really feel that the idea of safety and security does hit all of these points. And when I get into talking about CPTED, you'll see that there have been a couple of iterations of what that actually means to implementing those concepts. Social awareness. We need to all be able to work together and be safe and learn from each other and use spaces where we're building a positive connection between others. This applies everywhere. It's every single place, every design, every architectural project that we do, we're thinking about, safety and security of the users, the occupants, visitors, anybody who would use a facility. You do this all the time in practice, and we're talking about it specifically with most of the time governments, where there's a higher security or risk of concern with the information that would be potentially stored in those facilities. Why are we doing this? For the comfort and peace and productivity, even to the profitability of those particular businesses, and schools, and making sure that those places are safe for everybody and everything that would be within those facilities. What is CPTED? It's an abbreviation for crime prevention through environmental design. And this is a concept that has been around since the early 70s. It's a multidisciplinary approach. As architects, we are collaborating with all kinds of different engineers and planners and landscape architects, stakeholders, users, clients, and coming together in a cohesive fashion to really have a focus on what design decisions do we make to deter criminal behavior and improve the quality of life. It really belongs with the power of the people. And, I'll get into active versus passive strategies, but the people in the space are really what drives how a space will respond and react to the use. And it must be integral. We have to start planning for safety and security well early in the process. This is not something that you can add later in and assume that the strategies and concepts are going to work as if you had integrated it at the beginning, thinking about it in the initial kickoff meeting, and planning with your users and stakeholders what strategies could be implemented to make for a successful project in the end. There's this first generation of CPTED, which it was derived out of a document created for the US Housing Department and by Oscar Newman called Creating Defensible Space. And what this was is it discussed design strategies to use for architects and engineers and planners to identify spaces and look at concerns and attempt to remediate those through design decisions. These are 4 concepts that are included in that first generation of CPTED, and they are territoriality, and it is that exactly what I had mentioned, the occupant ownership of a place. They are the owner of their own personal awareness of that particular space. Natural surveillance is how that particular occupant can be aware of their surroundings as well as their personal space. Perception, and this goes into the idea that people are using spaces that feel comfortable and feel like they are maintained and taken care of. So maintaining places, so facilities groups, and the way they're maintaining the buildings and their parks, it really drives how that space could be used and the frequency of the use and the people that it would draw into that kind of a space. Access control, and this really was one that it's a novel concept back in the 70s that, limiting the occupancy. Why are we allowing certain people into spaces that may bring unwanted behaviors? And it's an introverted way of looking at design and inclusivity. When we get into the second generation of CPTED, this starts to talk about the social awareness and how we're trying to create solidarity between us socially. And we as users or occupants of a facility, whether it's a park or a government building, a school, we are working together and looking to solve localized problems. This is like a neighborhood watch. We are working as a community. We are all looking to work together and build camaraderie. And the idea of social awareness, this was an expansion on that awareness that we can all be aware together and utilize our behaviors to really impact how a place will work. Diversity, and this is a notion of bringing demographic diversity, capacity of use. And this is, for example, in a particular plan for a city, maybe there are less percentages of alcohol serving establishments. And it's just a way to create a balance of types of uses to bring diverse backgrounds, diverse people together to have that solidarity that the second generation is looking to achieve. And connectivity, we're always looking to link occupants and the idea of transparency and inclusivity. And this is the extroverted, the preferred way as we have developed in our industry of wanting to accept and be open to all of these different ideas and people coming together. What is my role as an architect? I'm an architect and I'm trained to be the collaborator. I'm the one that's managing, most design projects, using our resources and engineers and planners to, collaborate, harmonize our ideas. And then we're looking to really think outside the box and creatively about how we implement, these solutions that are cohesive. Not every problem is going to be complex, but, we do work on complex problems a lot of times. And what we do is we provide solutions to those problems. And safety and security is one of those integral solutions. As we look at full holistic designs, we're talking about everything from engineered systems through safety and security and even into aesthetics. And the idea is that we're going to balance all of this in a way where a project feels, looks, acts, and is comfortable for occupants and users. And what we're doing is, a lot of things that we don't necessarily want to see, like the safety and security, all of that is stuff that we can balance and almost disguise in a way where it blends and fits with the facility and does not appear as if you're walking into a fortress. The integrated design process is not a concept that I've derived. It is something that I use as a basis for how I work. It's an idea of bringing all of these ideas together and providing a cohesive solution. We must bring balance. That balance is of all those items I listed, beforehand and even more. As projects come up, there are specific solutions that need to be applied to specific projects, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Value. The idea of value is, not just cost, but also value to the client. Something that costs a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean it has a lot of value. So when we're talking about passive and active strategies, there are things that end up costing money to the project that will also add value and vice versa. So that is something that also needs to be balanced in the project, and talking about how much a project costs and budget is all part of that discussion. And we have to understand what the goals are. And that's why as architects, we strive to meet with our client regularly, have charrette sessions where we can look at the design holistically and even utilize everyone's ideas in the final solution. And understanding what kind of people and place we are looking at designing for that particular solution. Safety and security is not an afterthought by any stretch of the imagination. We, as an architect, as defined by the Florida Department of Business Regulation and nationally through the IAA, I have a general. I'm looking at the profession with the general health, safety, and welfare of the public, for which I'm designing these projects. So it already is inherent to what I do on a daily basis. But this is something that not a lot of people think of at the beginning of a project, because a lot of times it's more or less just adding cameras or access control key cards or bollards, something to protect the facility as just a general requirement, and not thinking about it holistically. So what I wanted to get out of this is that, this does take place at the charrette, the design kickoff at the very beginning. And then we go through the process of, what we do, anything from hand sketching to creating models to the final built solution. It's always there in the forefront as a thought, and it's implemented appropriately that way. So I've provided a couple of links. I think that it would be beneficial for anybody that has an interest in safety and security. This website particularly can expand into many other areas, but these are a couple of specific links that I think would be integral to what we are talking about today. As I mentioned, it's not one size fits all. You can't just apply cameras and access cards to every project and assume you're implementing safety and security strategies, because that's not the case. I've taken on this as a passion, and I've written a couple of blog posts and white papers about this. Happy to be presenting in this kind of a format, because I do think it is an important part of the puzzle. There's something that must be integrated early. We know that it is not every project will have the same level of this implemented into that project. So what we can do is also a threat and risk analysis. Should it be an existing project or an existing facility that needs to be reviewed for maybe it's areas of concern where you think you could have a little more security for your particular facility, and understanding how the goals of that project particularly work with that analysis. And this is for both new and existing. So every single project, doesn't matter if we're designing a lobby renovation, which we've done in the past, where we're implementing security upgrades, or a brand new school building where we're designing it from the very beginning, ground up. And as a design team, we all need to be on the same page. We all need to think collaboratively. We know that it's iterative, which means that we will be constantly tweaking and collaborating and working together, not just internally within our design team as a silo, but with the users and the client, any stakeholder that would have an invested, in that particular project. We'd want them included, and it's something that we need to be approachable. This needs to be something that we can talk about and be open with each other with. When we're documenting this is where we need to be clear. Our design needs to be pretty concise with what we're doing. And this really applies to some of the active strategies that we're doing. When we're designing these for passive strategies, there's a little more fluctuation in terms of how it's documented, but that's just more of the design that goes into that particular project. The details will reflect the goals and the details of where we're putting cameras, what are the areas of concern, where are the higher risk areas, all of that goes into it. And that would be something that we would need to relay clearly with the contractor. And that way all three, owner, architect, and engineer and contractor, are on the same page. Understanding codes and standards. There are standards and rules out there for designing facilities with these types of concepts. And we'll use those as our foundation for implementing, whether it's a code-driven fire protection system or a UL listed bullet resistant system such as glazing that we will implement, and we'll utilize the manufacturer data and the information at hand to provide the solution as a turnkey with the contractor. We need to leverage the stakeholders. This is, I keep repeating that we need to all work together as a team. And now I'll start to get into some of the meat of what we're talking about. So implementing these, and I'm going to talk about passive strategies more, but I'll relay a little bit of what these active strategies are that we can talk about after we get into, kind of what they mean to me. Thoughtful architectural design, it results in places that are safe. And it also is a balance where we're balancing aesthetics and comfort. And there are many strategies that we can look at that will take this into account. There's active strategies that a lot of times are outwardly identifiable. This is a lot of times to warn off this unwanted behavior. It's the bollards that protect the sidewalk from the cars. It's the cameras that protect the building, which are pretty obvious a lot of times. And it's the key card swipes at the doors where obviously you can't get in the door unless you have access that's been granted. So, a lot of times these are costing money to the project, which at times they're okay, but a lot of times you don't necessarily need this based on the use. It just happens to be that a lot of the work that I do is government work. And, most of the time these are being implemented because of protecting the necessary information or people that are inside. So this is absolutely necessary, as I mentioned, and it enhances protection upon what we would typically design as a passive solution in the design. So some of the passive strategies, they're obviously going to be inconspicuous, and they're means of designing floor plans, making them more efficient, clear sight lines, things that you would not necessarily see or observe, but you would understand in your natural awareness of that space. And we look to effectively balance these. That's my goal. A lot of, every single design project I work on, my team and we are always looking at this from the occupant and is the occupant safe? And what is the exit strategy? And how does an occupant get out of the building? And where are the stairs located? Everything that goes into a design project and protecting the people that are within. And these are cost conscious because these are more or less just layers of good design. This is just how to be thoughtful and direct and implement really good practices in a routine way. So some of these active strategies, I'm sure you've seen these, and these are everywhere, and they're not uncommon by any means. And it is access control, intrusion detection. These are alarm systems. Like if you go to a university, you see the blue light, the call stations. These are there for the protection of people, and they're good to have in these specific cases. Surveillance, looking at cybersecurity and how we're protecting our nation's information. That is becoming a big deal. And, when we're talking about the nation's information, we're also talking about the electric grid and the water and sewer, the infrastructure that we have. How are we protecting that going forward? And a lot of times we're using these active strategies to do so. Fire protection, that's a code-driven item. Lightning protection is in Florida specifically. We do this a lot. And this is something that, almost every one of our projects will have some form of lightning protection system. Bullet and blast resistance assemblies, we do this, quite a bit on some of our work that we do for the government. This is inconspicuous, but it adds cost to the project. But what it does is it protects those inside from any of that unwanted behavior we're talking about. Structural hardening. This is becoming a big deal in Florida too, as a lot of our older buildings and infrastructure are aging. We're going in and working with our structural engineers and clients to how do we utilize your existing buildings or infrastructure and harden them to make them last and become more resilient for the future. And then airborne pathogens. We're in the age of COVID and airborne disease. So working with our mechanical engineers and how we deliver quality products and systems that will keep those safe in hospitals and other places where there's a lot of crowd. I'm just going to quickly go through, this is an example of the process of how we work, and me and my team. This is an example of a government funded project. It's a public project. It is used 24 hours a day. It is along an interstate. So we're talking about, a lot of people moving in and out of these facilities on a daily basis, both passenger vehicles with families, dogs, and also truck drivers. So the mix of people is pretty diverse in this particular facility. So this to me is one of those types of facilities that would be an excellent example of how we work. Visibility. This is a big one. We're looking to limit how distracted people will be inside enclosed spaces, opening up spaces, maximizing visibility, creating clear sight lines. A lot of people don't think that maybe you need to coordinate with landscape architecture about this, because utilizing low ground cover and vegetation so that you don't obstruct views is an important thing when you're talking about public facilities and many different types of people moving in and out. So this also has to do with creating barrier and allowing for that transparency to come through. A lot of times, what schools you're going to completely isolate students in a school from the outside. When the bell rings, those doors are locked. But there's ways to do that to where you can still make the building or the facility feel as if it's open and inviting without making it feel like it's a lot of times a prison. There's been this old adage that when you design a prison and when you design a school facility, you're almost designing the same building. You're just doing one for kids. So we don't want it to be that way. We want the buildings to all feel comfortable and utilize what we do best, how we can consult and make good decisions for clients, and do so that buildings feel as if how they should feel. Natural awareness, this is one of those CPTED concepts that just having the ability to be in an open public space that's busy and has others around, people that you can connect with and work with, live with on a daily basis, that every one of you can almost self-police your entire community together. And this idea of awareness of the facility really depends on the architect and design team making really good decisions for efficient buildings and efficient spaces. When we're creating parks and these other types of facilities, we really need to think about how you're entering a facility versus how you're using it, and where the playground's located and everything else that goes into that to keep the occupants safe and aware of their surroundings. Wayfinding, it's a common tool that we use. It's this particularly as a parking garage, anything through parking garages to parks and government buildings, utilizing wayfinding, not just for people entering the facility or those that understand what the facility is, but inside the facility, making sure that we have spaces that are not confusing. The last thing we want to do is develop a puzzle that requires signs at every corner to tell you how to get out. Wayfinding is a strategy that we use to supplement our efficient floor plans and designs to obviously help with exiting and entrance capabilities. Access, we need to provide access to first responders. Making sure that our entrances and the ability to access these spaces is available. Fires, anything that goes on, we need to be able to provide equal access and quick access if needed, should an event happen. And this also is from inside out. So people in an event need to have an efficient way to escape the building or the place. And this, to me, is one of the critical items that is not necessarily observable. When a project is complete or finished, it's not something that most will understand the work that went into a design solution. But this is something that is of most critical importance to a designer, an architect, and making sure that the place is easily accessible both in and out. Illumination is another passive strategy. That lighting, lighting is obvious. We're going to light our spaces, but lighting them appropriately and lighting them efficiently so that there's no dark spots. We want all public areas to be, illuminated, but we also don't want to illuminate too much to where it just feels uninviting. We want, inviting spaces. This is one of the spaces that our team has designed, and it's a beautiful space that's outside. It's among buildings, but it's a space that is one of those that gets used every day of the week. Every weekend it's packed. So what we're doing is creating these spaces through some of these strategies to really implement really good solutions and keeping them in a way to where they're not distracting from the use or function of the space. a couple of related concepts that really tie into safety and security. And I want to talk about WELL. WELL is a new idea, and it stemmed off of LEED. If anyone's not familiar with LEED, LEED is Leadership in Environmental and Energy Design, and it is a concept about sustainability and resiliency. Now, WELL is taking that a step further, and this is talking about the occupant health and the people and the users of the facility utilizing this building to its fullest, and not just the building performing on its own, but how does the building perform for its people and its users and its occupants that use it every day. You know, this is hundreds and thousands of things that can be applied, and you're essentially applying for a certification. Not applying for the certification still okay, but a lot of these concepts will apply to each and every design. You know, and there's seven concepts that are crucial to this, and it's, you know, providing clean air, clean water, nourishment, light, fitness, comfort, and mind. And all of these to me are daily necessities, right? You're always wanting to feel the most comfortable you can feel. And, you know, by using these 7 concepts within a building, it allows the designers utilizing this particular standard to implement strategies that best promote this well-being. And, you know, architectural design, it's a flexible, adaptable thing that we're always looking to evolve. You know, the way our world changes and the way our industry evolves, we need to be able to adapt and reflect that. You know, places need to also be able to adapt to human behavior. And we need to be able to implement certain strategies. And this WELL standard is a great way to design buildings that are flexible, adaptable, and can relate to the masses. Sustainability and resiliency, that's, you know, it's a concept that we're all thinking about. You know, everything from water and sewer infrastructure to the electric grid, electric vehicle charging, our climate and the sea rise. We're always looking at that. In Florida, we see, you know, a lot of this, you know, from most government agencies we work with, and we're looking to make the world a better place. We're looking to, you know, provide strategies that will keep us safe for the foreseeable future. You know, we're looking to mitigate natural disaster as best as we can. You know, sea level rise, hurricanes, tornadoes, all of that happens. And, you know, how we design our buildings and harden them really is impactful to the way that we work. You know, just a side story, I helped to design a project, and though this is not something to jump for joy about, we designed a facility in Charlotte County, Florida, that was one of the only ones that was still intact and used as an emergency response site for Hurricane Charlie when it happened. So that's the kind of work that we're trying to do, and working with clients to develop solutions that really you know, utilize that as the goal going forward. You know, we're future-proofing. When we talk about electrical vehicle charging or the power grid, we're future-proofing, you know, these facilities as much as we can, and looking for that as a concept to protect ourselves and our resources. You know, longevity is something that we're really focused on, and that's where I talked about hardening before. Hardening facilities is a means to bring more longevity to facilities that are aging and outdated. We're accommodating in first responders. Emergency management is a big one, as we had looked at in the passive strategies previous to this slide. And essentially, we're adapting and driving innovation. And we need to think outside the box. You know, if we don't think creatively, then we're going to get left behind, and we'll end up with solutions that we are not confident are at their best going forward. And some final thoughts. You know, we need to trust the process. And this boils down to the architect, this boils down to the engineers, stakeholders and clients. We all need to trust in each other that through the process, we're going to make the best decisions we can make. We're understanding the place and use. We obviously are looking at the exact specifics of the particular project for which we're looking at, and utilizing that in our goal to design a safe and effective use of that space. And we're thinking critically. We're never stagnant on our thought process. We're always researching, thinking about the next thing, utilizing strategies that are time tested, but also looking at how we implement new ones at the same time, and collaborating. We need to maximize our thought by utilizing our peers and our stakeholders for the maximum thought process to make sure that we're providing the best solutions. And balance. I keep talking about balance, but balance is one of those things that I think we all need to think about things holistically. And through hiring an architect and an engineer, and hopefully WGI, we'll provide that balance that's necessary. And a quote from Albert Einstein that I thought was interesting is, learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning. So we never want to stop questioning what is there, and we're going to design for the future. And with that, I appreciate everyone's time, and I can answer some questions, and we'll wrap up the presentation. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. I think, this is really something passionate of mine, and I hope everybody, took away from it, something that, really triggered a thought, or, we can have a conversation later. But if there's no other questions, maybe one. Scott, appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you for showing up to hear me talk about safety and security. Happy to have another conversation if so, but thank you again.